We're now ready to make our first graph. I've copied some code over from the course website that you can copy in piece by piece. In the previous videos, we learned how to get started with RStudio, how to load the tidyverse package, and how to read some data. We're now going to learn how to make a ggplot. ggplot is a function that we'll use for lots of visualizations in this class, and it has several arguments. When you make a call to ggplot, you'll type ggplot and then open parentheses. There are then two key arguments that you'll always be handing to your ggplot. The first is the data argument. This tells us where our data set are stored. Remember that table 1 here is a data set of information on a series of countries. Each country has a row and there's some statistics about each country. We then give it a mapping argument. The mapping argument tells ggplot what element of the data is going to be mapped onto what element of the plot. So this argument is a little complicated to look at. It says mapping equals AES, which stands for aesthetics. These are the aesthetics of our graph. The aesthetics of our graph are going to be that we put the ratio variable on the x-axis and the GDP variable on the y-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and run this ggplot line. I'm going to highlight just the part of the code I'd like to run, and I'm going to hit Command Return to run it. Remember, you can also click this Run button up at the top. Here we see we have a blank graph. We have, as requested, the ratio variable on the x-axis and the GDP variable on the y-axis. So now we're ready to start adding some things to our plot. Often the things that we add to our plot are geoms. They're going to be calls like this, geom_point, open and closed parentheses. When we run our ggplot call down through geom_point, what it's going to do is make the plot and add points. Remember here, each dot is a country, and that dot has a value on the x-axis for the ratio of the 90th percentile to the 10th percentile of the income distribution, and on the y-axis for GDP per capita expressed as a fraction of US GDP. Now you might want to say, how did I link these two function calls together? I linked them together with this plus sign. The plus sign plays an important role in producing a ggplot visualization. The plus sign connects various different calls together so that you can have an easily readable string of commands from your code at the top that goes on down through your code at the bottom, adding layer upon layer as we go. So remember, we started out with our base ggplot that had no data, and then we used this plus, put a new line, and we have geom_point to put the points in. Now while I'm here, I'm going to say a little bit about indentation. When you type in RStudio, it'll automatically indent things for you, but sometimes they can get a little wonky. Maybe we have stuff looking like this, so it's not especially readable. If you want to fix your indentation, you can always highlight part of your code and hit Command-I or Control-I. I'm about to do that right here. RStudio will automatically fix your indentation for you so that your open and closed parentheses are at the same level of indentation, and code within the parentheses are indented a little bit. It'll also indent every line after a plus that connects multiple strings of code. So now that we have our base plot, we might want to add additional things. For instance, we might want to add labels to our plot. We might want to relabel the x-axis and the y-axis. We can do this with the labs function. And so if we highlight all of this code here, we'll see we now have our ggplot. We started with our base ggplot. We added geom_point to put these points in. And then we added these labels. On the x-axis, this label about inequality, and on the y-axis, this label about GDP as a fraction of US GDP. When producing a plot, you will almost always begin with ggplot with data and a mapping. You almost always add a geom, like geom_point, and you will almost always have to update the labels so that they're more readable. In the next videos, we'll talk about some more advanced things you could do to make particularly interesting and creative plots.